One way to go about animating organic meshes that are all seamless meshes is to place bones inside the mesh, and when you move the bones it will deform the geometry. So I thought we could take a look at taking this item, this character, and putting a basic bone structure in it so we could see the process of rigging or placing bones in this character. So I already have it loaded up into layout. But one thing that we might think about doing, it's not always a requirement, but one thing that helps when you're rigging is if you use weight maps to isolate points on the geometry to attach them to certain bones. So I'm going to switch over to weight shade, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to start creating some weight maps. So I'm going to start by selecting the head and neck area, and I'm actually going to expand my selection down a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to create a new weight map, and I'm going to call this head, and we'll give it a 100% weight map. Okay, and all I'm doing is, because, and especially on most of the characters I like to make, the head is quite big, and what I'm worried about is that when I go and put a bone in the head and a bone in the shoulder bone might start pulling a little bit here, or the head bone might start pulling a little bit here. So I'm just going to isolate it with this weight map. Okay, so now I'm going to create just a real quick weight map of something like this. Come down here, maybe something like this, and I'm going to call this one body, 100%. Okay, I'm just doing it in nice big chunks so we can just use it when we need it. You don't have to use weight maps all the time. Okay, and then instead of doing the legs all as one, see how close the feet are? The feet are really close together. And the problem with that is that if I throw some bones in here, well, these 2 points might get confused and think that they belong to both bones. So I'm just going to grab this foot and expand my selection. And instead of stopping right at the middle point, I'm actually going to cross over. Okay, I like a little bit of bleed through. So I'm going to set this weight map and have this set up as left leg, 100%. Okay, and then I'm going to set this leg I'm going to make a new weight map, right leg. Okay, so now I've got just a few weight maps. I've got my right leg, I've got my left leg, I've got the head, and I've got the body. So I've got enough to just kind of isolate. I can always come back and make new weight maps. I can adjust the weight maps, but this is enough for me to feel comfortable going in and start rigging. So I'm going to send this over. I'm going to synchronize it to layout. Okay, and now I'm ready to start setting up the bones. Now, one of the things I like to do in layout whenever I'm in the rigging stage is I don't need a camera or a light for rigging. So I'm going to come over to the scene editor and turn those off, lock them so I can't accidentally select them. That also allows me to hit A to fit to window. Okay? Can't do that with the bones and the camera and the lights in there because it'll fit to window to everything in the scene. So I like to just quickly work this way. Now, one of the other things we need to know is that the object, if I go over to properties, it's a subpatch object, and I'm going to change the display level to 1 just for rigging purposes. If you notice, it's still going to render at 3, and I like to animate with it at 1 as well, but you can always turn it back to 3 after you finish rigging, or just keep it at 3, but I'll kind of explain why I like it at 1. The subdivision order, I want it to be last. I want it to be after bones and if I apply any dynamics or anything, so I'm just going to set that to last. I'll get better deformations this way. It won't freeze the object and then try and deform it. It will wait until after all the different displacements. Okay, so I'm going to switch to front face, and front face. And for my perspective view, I'm going to turn bone X-ray on so that I can see the bones right on top of the geometry. Okay. Now, one thing that we need to know, now I am kind of cheating on this in that I usually like to have my characters facing down the positive Z just in case if I'm going to apply any motion modifiers, but if you have no plan on doing any targeting or motion modifiers, you're fine having it face down the negative Z. But just know, most of the time you want it facing down the positive Z when you do your rigs. Okay, but the other thing to keep in mind is depending on what window you draw in, will determine the pitch. So what I'm going to do is come over to my setup tab, draw bones, and I'm going to draw a bone in this window, okay, and then I'm going to draw a bone in this window. Okay, so look at what direction. Let me go to Y for rotate. Look at the direction of the pitch here, and look at the direction of the pitch here. So depending on what axis you draw on, what window you draw on, will determine the pitch. So it's kind of important to know which window you're drawing in to get the setup that you want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clear those and come over to this window right here, the side window. And I'm going to start drawing kind of like a little spine setup. So I'm going to come over to setup. Now, the difference between draw bones and draw child bones is that draw bones is going to draw independent bones. They won't be connected to each other. They'll be parented to the base mesh, but they're not going to be connected to themselves. I like to use draw child bones. The first bone that you draw is actually a parent bone, and then the next one will be connected. Okay? It's very similar to working with skelegons in Modeler. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a couple bones up the spine. I'm kind of curving them. You can keep them straight if you want, but I'm kind of curving them with the mesh. And then I'm going to bring the neck bone, and then I'll just do a big bone for the head. So that if I ever turn off the mesh and just see the bones, I can see this giant bone pointing forward, and I know that that's the front of the head. It's just something that I like to do, but it's not a necessary thing. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and commit to that. See, with bone X-rays on, bone X-ray on, we can see the bones right through the mesh. Now they're not turned on right now, but that's okay. And one of the things that I should really do, but I'm going to save, I'm not going to do for this video, is you should really name the bones. The only reason I'm not naming the bones is just to save time on the video so that you don't have to see me and my slow typing. But you should really name the bones, and I would probably name this first bone COG, or center of gravity, or root. Something that says that this is kind of like the base bone, and then you've got spine, neck, and head. Okay, so and remember, this is kind of blocky. The character is kind of blocky because we lowered the subpatch level. It's just easier to work with, and then we can always raise it back when needed. Okay, so now that I have this set up, I'm going to go ahead and draw some arm bones. Now, I'm not going to draw them in the side view first. It would be kind of hard to place them, but I can draw them either in the top view or the front view. But let's go ahead. I'm going to pick the front view to work with. So I'm going to come over here. I like using all 4 of my windows whenever I'm doing this, but you can work whichever way works best for you. I'm going to select this bone right here, and I'm going to draw a child bone off of it. Okay, kind of like a little clavicle there. And then I like to have a little shoulder bone. It's not necessary, but I like to have a little shoulder bone. And there's different ways of setting up a shoulder bone, but for right now I'm just going to set up a little shoulder bone there. And then I'm going to create the upper arm, the lower arm, and for right now, instead of creating all the bones for the hand, I'm just going to draw it. This is just an introduction to bones, so you don't need to see me drawing all the little bones. Maybe we'll do that in the future. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and turn bones on. So under setup, bones, I'm going to activate the bones. Okay. Now I notice that I didn't get the bones right down the arm, but that's okay because we can fix that. But I just want to test this out. I'm going to grab the upper arm bone and I'm going to rotate it. Okay. See how it's pulling on the hair a little bit? It's also collapsing in the chest, but we can fix that. So it's pulling on the hair a little bit, and that's where we're going to use that weight map. The other thing is that I want to have it so that my pitch is what's rotating. So there's some things that we need to adjust. Well, we don't need to, but I want to adjust just to clean up the rig a little bit, and it'll also allow us to look at some tools. So I want to first start by having it so that my pitch is where my heading is for the most part. So I'm going to grab its parent, and I'm going to come over to bone twist, and I actually need to zoom in because it's such a small little bone. And I'm just going to rotate. I'm going to twist that bone so that my pitch is facing the direction that I want. And now whenever I come to this bone, it actually affected this because, well, why did I have to twist its parent in order for it to work? Well, because our setup is, our coordinate system is set to parent. So the child is taking the information from its parent, so I needed to twist the parent. But that's one way of using bone twist to get the to get the rotation handles how I want them. Okay. Now I'm also seeing that the bones aren't in the right place for the arm. They're kind of outside, which isn't really going to do me much good. So I'm going to select the mesh, come over to tip move, and I'm going to move this, and it moves the parent and all the children. It moves the entire hierarchy. Just kind of rotate this into place, and I might as well, now that I've got that into place, I'm going to go over to joint move, and I'm going to move these joints. See, it didn't affect the hierarchy. Okay, so that's the difference between joint move and tip move, is that joint move is just going to move the joint that I'm selecting. Tip move will move the whole hierarchy that follows underneath it. So I'm going to hit spacebar to commit. We have to know that anytime we use those, it's turning the bones off, and it's also disabling IK, which we're not going to use right now, but just so you know. Okay, so now I feel like it's a little bit more in the mesh, so I'm a little more excited about that. Now we did see the problem that, let me go ahead and turn bones on. I'm going to move over to frame 10 and just rotate. You can see, well, the legs, there are no bones in the legs, so they're like jelly. But the hair is pulling, and I don't like that. So I'm going to come over to frame 0. We always set up on frame 0. Most of the bone tools don't even work on anything but frame 0, but that frame 0 is our setup frame, and we want to keep with that. So what I'm going to do to kind of fix that whole head problem is I'm going to grab this bone, P for properties. Now I can change the fall off type if I want, but for right now I'm just not going to mess with it. You can change it so that the fall off is much smaller, but you can also change the strength of the bones. But for right now, I want to use weight maps. So for this head bone right here, I'm going to change the weight map to head. I'm going to use the arrow key to go down, and I'm going to change that bone to head. If you don't put a weight map, it's just going to use its fall off. I'm going to just try that with some of these. For this bone, I'm going to set it to body, body, and body. Remember, the body weight map was this whole area right here. So with those selected, I'm going to come over to frame 10. I just use 10 usually as my test frame. Look at that. So I'm not affecting the head, and the head bones aren't affecting the arms, so I get a much better setup. Now, That other arm needs work, but we're not there yet. Well, actually, let's go ahead and get there. I'm going to undo, come over to frame 0. I'm going to select this bone right here, and I'm going to come over to mirror hierarchy. Now, I don't have any goals or any targets, and I want to mirror across the X. Now, I don't have any names, so right now I'm just going to click none. But say you had left, I could say, I want to say everywhere that it says left or LT, I want to replace it with RT, okay, for right. But right now I'm just going to set none, okay, and look at that. I only had to build one set one arm setup, and the other arm setup is set up for me. So let's turn on bones, go over to frame 10, and I'm going to rotate this and see the other arm's not affected. But now what is affected is the chest. Look at the chest, it's just caving in. There's no support structure. There should be a rib cage there. So one thing that we could do, well, we know how to set up a weight map, so we could set up a weight map. But actually, I don't want to set up a weight map. What I want to do is I'm going to take this bone right here, and I'm going to use bone split. See, it says I need to be on frame 0, so I'm going to come back over to frame 0, and I'm going to use bone split. And I can split it into as many bones as I want, but I'm going to split it into just 2. And I'm going to take this selected bone, go over to draw child bone, and I'm going to draw a bone that sticks out, kind of representing where the rib cage would be. Now I'm going to stick it out a little bit because I can always adjust that. Okay, commit to that, turn bones on, and now I'm going to go over to frame 10 and rotate the arm down. See how the chest isn't caving in? That's pretty cool. That's called the hold bone. Okay, so I'm putting the arm down. Now one thing that I can do, which can be very useful, is to select this bone, come over to get a good angle on this, come over to bone properties and change my rest length to see how much give do I want it to have, right? So I want it to have about that much give. I can also take this bone if I wanted to and lower its strength. See how it's affecting the mesh by lowering its strength? Okay. But I'm just going to set that back up at 100. I can take this bone and increase its strength if I want. I can take this bone and increase its strength if I want. Okay, so I can also change my fall off type up here. I'm going to change these back to 100. I usually don't like going over 100, but I wanted to show you that you can. I can also change my fall off type. If I want to, I can have it affect less of an area, or I can have it affect more of an area. Okay, and so let's say that we've got our hold bone in place. Okay, and I kind of want to adjust my shoulder placement a little bit, so I'm actually going to do that. I'll try not to get too picky because I just want to kind of introduce you to this, but it's kind of my nature. So I'm going to select this mesh, go over to joint move, and I'm going to adjust the placement of my shoulder a little bit. Maybe something like this. Okay, and bones on. And now when I take this, let's see what it does. Much better. I get more. Look at the shape of my shoulder area. It's much nicer. Okay, so I'm going to go with that. I can adjust the other side too, but let's just add a quick set of legs so that we can have a basic rig, and we'll wrap on this. So I'm going to zoom out. Actually, let's just use this window. Now, when I go to start drawing new bones, I need to select my object. That's where I want to put the bones in. And so I'm going to come over to draw bones, because this time I don't want them connected to any of the other bones. And I'm going to draw a little hip bone. Go over to draw child bones, and I'm going to draw the thigh bone. I'm going to have a slight bend in my leg, and when you see how to set up IK, you'll see that a little slight bend goes a long way. So I'm going to have my lower leg, I'm going to have a little ankle bone, and then I'll have foot and toe. Okay. By drawing them in the side view, again, I controlled which direction pitch would be, which is important. Now I drew them in the side view, and that means that my bones are running right down the center, which I don't want. So I'm going to move them. So I'm just going to go T for move, and I'm going to move it into place, say something like this. Okay. Now the thing to know is when you move a bone, yeah, you can keyframe it and it's there, but it doesn't think that it's really there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the error, and then we'll see how to fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the bones on. Whoa, look at this. It shifted all the way over because we keyframed this bone. But watch what happens when I hit R for rest. It says that's the resting place for the bone. That's where it really needs to be on frame 0 on the setup frame. So we now know that we can move the bones, but we need to rest them in order for them to work properly. Otherwise, it thinks that they've been keyframed into place instead of having them as their starting place. Now I'm going to go to tip move and just kind of adjust. The lower part was sticking out, so I adjusted it with tip move. I'm going to grab the top hip bone, go over to mirror hierarchy because I want to mirror that bone and all of the hierarchy underneath it, and click OK. And so now I have everything I need to get going. Now what I can also do is parent these two bones to the cog, to the center of gravity, or to the root, and work that way. Oh, one more thing, and then we'll wrap up on this. Is now if I go and select this bone and rotate it, see how it's pulling on the other leg? Not really realistic. I'm not really digging that. So what I'm going to do is grab this bone, P for properties, weight map, and that's our left leg. Arrow key to the next bone, left leg, left leg, left leg, left leg, and that could be body or left leg. I'm just going to do left leg. Okay, and then I'm going to go to this bone and choose right leg, right leg, right leg, right leg, right leg, right leg. Okay, and now when I grab this, look, it's not affecting the other leg. It's because the points are so close together that you'd want to use a weight map. You could try fall off on the bones, you could try all sorts of things, but to me a weight map, especially for the legs, is the way to go. And I like to do that for the head as well. I used to, before I used weight maps for separating, for isolating areas, I would draw like these spiky shaped bones just to kind of fill the head in, and you can do that, but I think a weight map's easier. And then when we go to animate, this is our bone setup. I mean, we can add more. We might need another, we need another chest one. We might want a hip one, depending on the style of the characters. If you've got a character that's very shapely, I'll say, you might need some hold bones in the belly and things like that. So, but this is just a basic setup so that you could see placing bones, isolating geometry using weight maps, or hold bones. Don't forget about our hold bones, because sometimes the hold bones look better than weight maps because it allows for a little bit of stretch, but we can still hold the geometry how we need to hold it. So we took also don't forget about some of the other bone tools. Like we were able to fix the rotation handles the way we wanted them for the using bone twist. We could move the entire hierarchy of a setup using tip move. We could use joint move to just affect the joint between two bones, and we could split bones using bone split, and we mirror hierarchy. That's how we were able to make one arm, mirror it over, take one leg and mirror it over. So again, just a quick look at setting up bones in an object, taking advantage of weight maps and some of the bone tools.